Everyone, this is Sheets. Welcome back, I guess, to me. I've been away for a while, and welcome back to everybody for MLB season. We've all been away for a while, and we're hoping to continue the successes that we had last year. I mean, for those of you who were following, there was a time where I ran particularly hot in baseball, and Bobby, it's always been, I considered one of his best sports. His NFL Millie win notwithstanding, I still regard him as more of a baseball guy than a football guy. And there's plenty of reasons for that. But we have Jordan from Sabersim on, and should be no secret our relationship with Sabersim over the years. And I know Andy from Sabersim way back from the poker days, and I kind of exaggerate my stories as I tend to do when I am old as I am. But I'd like to say that I might be the first person to use Sabersim. Maybe that's not exactly true, but I definitely think I'm one of the first people in the industry to actively talk about it, whatever. And now obviously Sabersim has grown to the point where little old Sheets can barely get Andy on the phone for anything anymore, but whatever. But Sabersim, I mean, again, really quickly, I always considered Sabersim the next wave of the optimizer revolution. I never even considered it an optimizer, more of like a smart lineup builder or something like that. I forgot. I used to have a really cool way to describe it, but Sabersim is clearly the way, as far as I'm concerned, that as long as you have you know how to use it properly, it's the best tool to create high upside lineups specifically in GPPs. Like, I don't play cash. I don't know how to play cash. I don't want to play cash. I'm sure you could use Sabersim to play cash, but the edge you get from Sabersim over the other tools related to cash is not as big as the edge you get in creating GPPs. So that's kind of my history with that. So what we want to do is go through how Sabersim specifically applies to baseball. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, we already do have a slate that's up for tomorrow where we can kind of demo it. And I'm gonna let Jordan for like 5 minutes to just to go over in general, how Sabersim deals with baseball, and then we're gonna actually just pull up my screen as I always do, and we're gonna go through like how to actually use it to build. And what's cool about that is people will see me kind of struggle with it, as I still do, even though I've been using it forever. And Jordan can help with like the new tools and the new things that could help us get better. So why don't you just again, not too long, maybe like 5 minutes, let's just talk about like how Sabersim specifically deals with baseball.
Yeah. So everything comes down to our simulations. So when you pull up the Sabersim app, you see projections, you see ownership, a lot of stuff you might be familiar with if you've used other tools out there. But what's going on under the hood is quite a bit more advanced than that. So we're doing play-by-play simulations of every game, essentially at-bat by at-bat simulations of every game, hundreds of thousands of these, accounting for everything that matters in baseball. We're accounting for batter and pitcher handedness, weather, umpires, short-term and long-term form, how we view these different players, how the market views these different players, and assembling these game scripts for how the games might play out. And when you build lineups on Sabersim, it is that data from the sims that gets directly pulled in to your lineups. So each lineup that you build on Sabersim for any contest, anything like that, is always essentially the winning lineup for a given way that the slate might play out. It goes beyond just average projections. And I think everybody that's played baseball DFS before knows how little just the projection alone really captures. You've got the correlation between hitters. You've got these big upside outcomes that are possible for virtually any player playing baseball that night, just by virtue of the fact that they're going to get 3, 4, 5 at-bats. You've got ownership, which is a huge factor when it comes into baseball. And on other tools, or even if you're building by hand, you have to bridge the gap yourself from projection to good lineup. And it's a huge gap. It takes a ton of work. You have to put in a ton of rules. You have to set exposures for virtually every player in the pool. All of this stuff to get an optimizer to understand what makes a good lineup. You don't have to do that on Sabersim. You have just as much control over what stacks you want to get to, or what types of constructions you want to play, or maybe some stands or fades you want to take on the field. And we'll have a chance to talk about what that looks like here in a second. But the sims put you 80-90% of the way there right out of the get-go, and you fill in with that remaining 10 to 20%, which is your research or your takes on the slate. And it's really a huge advantage to beating this game.
Okay, let me stop for a second, because you never know where these videos are going to go, and it's usually the way mine work. And it could end up as train wrecks, and I didn't know this is the way I was going to go. But we just had another call that reminded me of something to stress here. See, when we first started with Sabersim, they were really the only ones that were doing contest sims and sims and things like that. So it wasn't like that big of a deal. We could tell them this is what we were doing, and people took their word for it or whatever. And then like these other companies started to do sims. And listen, Sabersim, their company, first of all, they had first mover advantage, which is good. And they also have very sharp people working for them, which is also good. And I feel as though I have to stop for just a second. When I first heard, from Sabersim that, well, what we're doing is we're simulating these games 100,000 times. We're going hole by hole. I remember when Matt once first said, well, I do my golf simulation. I go like hole by hole. I go from the tee back to the whatever. And then we play this out a million times. The first thing I said was, that's a bunch of fucking bullshit. I mean, honestly. Like, they're saying they're doing that, but how do I know that they're actually doing that? Whatever it is. It seems like so stupid. But the one thing you've learned in business over the years is that, and this is from our conversation before, is that whether you're talking about business models or companies or whatever, at the heart of this are the people involved in it, okay? And as I mentioned, I know these guys for like I know Andy going way back from poker. He was one of like 1/10 of 1% of like the poker industry who's trustworthy, and that's what the poker industry is, and the more I learn of like all these different people that work for Sabersim, like you have really one freaking super sharp mother effer after another, okay, that work there, and I congratulated Andy on this a few months ago, and you embarrassingly, you were one of the people I called out to him, and believe me, although like you don't get to see like the nuts and bolts behind of what's going on, and this is part of in my hedge fund world, at some level you have to trust the people that you're doing business with, and these Sabersim people are really freaking pure. Okay, and like every once in a while, I'll look at one of their projections or one of their sims like this. It makes no freaking sense, but at least I know that they're pure about what they're doing. Okay, and I've tested out other sim products, whatever, and I promise you that 40% of them at least are just hopeless. Now they could be decent down the road, I have to say, but right now, like these guys are really really good, to the point where we'll get to process in a minute. Someone who's I consider myself a sharp guy who knows a little bit about something, I rely on Sabersim's algorithms and their lineup builds blindly more than probably 95% of the people who make money at DFS that use Sabersim do. Like a lot of people that use Sabersim, they input their own stuff. They put. I rely on you guys, and I rely on this stuff like quite a bit. So when they say that this is, they're not just like throwing out projections and building out random lineups, believe me, that's the case. And when you go through, by the way, like all my big scores over the last like year or two that I use Sabersim, one thing I will tell you is that if you highlight like the winning lineup in whenever I've won, it's almost always something I never would have played on my own. Like it's always some stupid freaking stack in baseball that never would have had on my own, and it goes for whatever. So we at TrueDFS really are about like process. I mean, to the like an insane degree. So when you use Sabersim as part of your process, you trust the process and don't worry too much about the outputs. You're going to be in really, really good shape. So what I want to do is I'm going to take this exact slate for tomorrow, and just show you like my process, like, and try to put all of it together. Because one thing that's cool about baseball, unlike basketball, for example, which is what kind of we're dealing with right now, baseball, I feel the delta between what you get from using the sims and the contest sims relative to what you would just use, using an optimizer, is so much greater in baseball than it is in basketball, whatever. And I think that's really important. Okay, so as always, what you have to do is you have to change something. But before you even do that, okay, and this is again maybe in a little too advanced, but the first thing I always do is I upload my whatever dummy lineups I've created on DraftKings or FanDuel to this. And it's a little bit of a pain to remember to do that, but for me, it's not a big deal. I figure out what I'm going to play, like 11 in the morning, This way you don't worry about getting shut out. This way you reserve your lineups or whatever, just to show you guys like how to do this. You go to the contest things, ignore it's 153, pretend it was 0. You would click on upload entries, and you click on download files from DraftKings, and automatically it downloads that to your wherever your downloads are supposed to go.
Yep.
And then in like 2 seconds it blasts, and it just comes right up into your contest, into your entries. So like right here, like it'll show you exactly what you're planning on playing, like 150 in the opening day special, 1 in the walk-off home run, 1 in this. And what's cool about this is it automatically pre-populates all this data about the contest.
Yep.
So that when you're ready to run the contest sims, it's already kind of put in there for you. Now there's one step that it's a little harder in FanDuel. You actually have to go to FanDuel to download the files, but for openers, let's dispense with that. So once this is all up here, it's just a matter of, again, if you just want to use Sabersim projection, you just got to change a little tiny something for DraftKings so they don't yell at you.
Yep.
And what I do right away is I don't make any changes. I don't change my projections. I don't set any rules. I don't do anything at this point, okay? And just build 5,000 lineups. Now, again, these are different things you could mess with if you wanted, like min, max. Again, Sabersim, I think at the beginning they prefer to like just not give people the option to make a lot of changes because, quite honestly, it's mostly not for their own good to make all those changes. But so many people were so used to the big optimizers, whatever, like, why can't I change my exposure? Why can't you? They're like, okay, you want it, you got it. You can make it as customized as you want,
Yeah.
But here I always use the default settings to start off with, and then you just hit this build lineups thing, and now what it's doing, okay, in the background again, it says analyzing simulations. It has this little GUI, and part of me, I'm like, okay, is this really what's happening? What it's technically doing is it's simulating these games. It's coming up with 5,000 lineups kind of to choose from for you to build. Okay, now while this is happening, I don't know how long it's going to take for baseball, but it's important to distinguish between two things regarding these simulations. Remember, there's two components here. There's the game simulations where it's trying to figure out what's going to happen in the actual games to generate these range of outcomes, for lack of a better description. And then there's the contest simulations where then Sabersim is going to tell you, okay, given these are the good lineups based on the game simulations, now let's figure out which of these lineups you want to put in which particular contest. And it's only taken me years and thousands of times explaining it to get that to sound exactly the way I wanted to say it. So that looks good.
That is a good way to say it. Yeah, that's exactly right. I want to stress that those are two different things. It's kind of important to understand what's going on there. So you nailed it. That when you build lineups, we're taking the game simulations, what might happen on the baseball diamonds, and say when this outcome happens for this slate, this is the best lineup you could play. When this outcome happens for the slate, this is the best lineup you could play. We do that 5,000 times. And then when we do the contest sim, which it looks like you're about to do here, we take that.
We'll get there.
Okay, that whole pool of lineups that you build, we're saying, now what if you put this in the 100K to first flagship GPP? Does this lineup make money compared to the other lineups that we think you're likely to compete against in that contest, based on the payout structure of the contest, based on how many lineups you are competing against? So there's kind of two different sims that are going on there, assuming you're using the ultimate plan. You've got the contest sims there.
Okay, so at this point, again, we're just doing it just as a user. At this point, it stopped. It ran the 5,000 lineups, and now this is what you're looking at. And for a lot of users, I have to say, Jordan, right now it looks a little bit weird. You know what I mean?
It does look a little weird.
Because this is where it stopped, right? So most people, when they run lineups, say, okay, what are my freaking lineups? Like who do I have?
Yeah.
Where is that? So it's built these 5,000 lineups. Like, where are we, right? So part of this, the answer to this next question, I guess, comes for what plan you have, I suppose. But like, since I have like access to everything, we're gonna operate on the assumption we have everything. Okay. So it defaulted on this like autofill kind of thing. I guess we have to get back to that to see what your lineups are. Like, before you even run the sims, you have to click on this direct fill button, right? Is
that's
that accurate?
It'll default to whatever one of those you've used most recently. So it
Okay.
looks like you've used autofill most recently, which is a good thing, which is what I would recommend people do, but we can
We'll
talk
get
about
to
that in a second. So I guess looking on direct fill, this is kind of what you'd see as soon as the build completes normally. So you're seeing the top 153 lineups at the moment sorted by Saber score, which
We'll
is
get there.
yeah.
So right now it's just you again. I've made no change. It's giving me 5,000 lineups, and it's listing the top 153. Now, if you want to examine what all this is, like you can just do that. So the first thing, again, if I weren't totally streamlined, what I would look at, let's see who I have here. So look to be 50% Kikuchi, 47% Skeens, 30%, whatever it is. And then I would probably look at stack exposure. Team stacks first to see what I would have. So I'd have 35% Atlanta, 20, etc. Now, I want you guys to kind of think about this. Like, remember this for now, right? 35% Atlanta, 30% Pittsburgh, 25% Mets, 22%. Just remember this type of stuff. I'll show you why in a minute. And this is stack exposure, how many 5-2s you have, how many 5-3s. This is without making any changes, okay? So what this is, listing it by, as Jordan mentioned, is something called Saberscore. You haven't done any sims, you haven't done anything else. But what Sabersim did is they created these kind of formulas that kind of rank the lineups in certain ways. So like if you ever wanted to get into what these numbers are, you could go into Saberscore, and it's large slate, and it's got to be.
Just go straight to the left first.
Yeah, straight to the left first.
There you go.
And then you can click on this eyeball if you want and get really into the weeds and figure out what this is. So 0.3 times the sum of the projections, some of my projections, that makes sense. And then this is actually interesting. So this is 0.7 times the 99th percentile outcome of the lineup. Okay, so we'll get back to that, right? And then it dings it for ownership by subtracting 0.6 times the average adjusted ownership. Now, this 99th percentile thing is interesting because some people are used to seeing like players listed by like what their outcomes are. But if I'm not mistaken, this is actually the 99th percentile outcome of the lineup. Is that right?
Yes. That's correct. And that's a very subtle difference, but a lineup percentile is going to take into account things like correlation is the main value that you're getting there. And that's why that weighting is so high. If you compare that Saber score to something like NBA, you'll see that the projection is quite a bit higher weighted than the lineup percentile. But in baseball, we want to capture the relationship that your players have within a given lineup. And the best way to do that for something like Saber score is with that lineup percentile.
So if you were not, an ultimate package, whatever, you just didn't want to do sims or whatever, you could be well within your rights to just fire these lineups literally as is. Kind of right. And just as an example, just to show you, I could just hit save to contest and just to do it. We save here, we download it, we upload it. And then, I mean, it's just really crazy, like how fast this thing all is. You don't need to be quite as fast in MLB as you are in like NBA, but it's good to know that everything could just fire off so fast. So now the other thing, like you could make changes like along the way. Like let's just say that you were like maybe like a purist like me, and you didn't want any of these like bow wow stats, like 4-2s, 3-2s, 3-3s, or whatever. What you could do is kind of X these out. And what's really cool, this is still one of the greatest things I think about Sabersim, is that whenever you make changes after you built these 5,000 lineups, one of the reasons you make these 5,000 lineups is that if you change something that makes some of these 153 not work anymore, then it automatically has this pool of 4,847 other lineups that it can pull, and you won't have to redo anything. Like for example, let's say I only wanted to do 5-0s, 5-3s, and 5-2s. Like you could X these out just like this by unchecking these, and then click on apply. Over here, and then you'll see what happens is that we got a couple more bow wow stacks. So again, me being OCD, we'll just continue to do this until I get what I want. But the point is that you don't have to rebuild anything. It's still picking the best the best 153 given these new changes you made. So again, if you wanted to, boom, save the contest, you could put it right up there.
Yep.
So I presume like no questions from the crowd as far as this goes. This is all stuff you could do without running any of the sims that will already put you, in my opinion. I think honestly that if you even did this, you could probably be plus EV in baseball.
I think so. Yeah.
I think so, and you're certainly going to be well ahead of people using traditional optimizers, and that's 100% for sure.
I want to throw something else out there too. It's pretty easy to enter whatever projection set that you have if you want to use them and use the Sabersim optimizer. That's one thing. We do have, TrueDFS. We have Sheets' projections and Goldie's projections as well. That is just a way of even differentiating yourself even more within the same Sabersim, umbrella or whatever. You're getting a slightly different build from that type of thing alone. I'm interested in, because I know Sheets is like, well, only 5 man ever stack. I'm really curious to see what the industry starts doing, especially at higher buy-in, smaller field stuff. Because I started noticing a trend towards the end of last year where there was a ton of top players who had almost no stack relevance whatsoever. I mean, like Brandon Adams was throwing out lineups where literally there was never 2 players from the same team. It was basically like cash game lineups at the highest level. Now, in general, for large field and stuff, I understand the 5 mans and everything. I'm just curious to see if there starts to be a little bit of a pivot back away from that, just from a player standpoint, even though I know that's not what all this taking into account. I just want to throw out a couple things because I haven't done anything yet.
We will find out.
We'll find out. I'm curious to see what happens.
So to get to Bobby's point, like if you wanted to not use Sabersims and use your own projections, obviously you have to have a file somewhere. And like, for example, I already did a set of my own for tomorrow. And again, Sabersim makes it pretty easy to do this. As long as you sort of have the right template. This is like my own. And you just have to make sure you do the right things here. So I exclude unlisted players. I don't apply to all slates. Now, boy, oh boy. What this is, since Bobby brought it up, if you're going to put your own projections in, you get this option. And again, people just ask for this. So Sabersim said, okay, you want it, you got it. This will create your own contest field based on exclusively your ownership projections, right? And your stuff. So if you want to create your own contest field as well, you could put it in here and you'd hit save. And then you got to call it something. Let's just call it Sheets.
Yeah.
And then you hit save. And then what it's going to do is now it's going to run, I guess, another 5,000 lineups somewhere. And it's creating this like field that and we're going to get to contest sims in a minute. But what it's doing is creating your own custom contest field that if you want, and for baseball and for most sports, I don't recommend. But if you want to replace the Sabersim contest fields, which we're going to get to maybe in a couple of minutes, listen, as Sabersim said, peace. You really want to do it yourself? Go ahead. You trust your ownership projections, your own stuff more than us. Peace. Go ahead, do what you want. But we'll get there. But I will say this: usually a bad idea. Okay. All right. So we're back into build 1. Now we have this thing that says run contest sim. If you already, a member, you already have your things filled out, it's going to put run contest sims. Now, when you click this, what it's going to do, it's going to take your 5,000 lineup, not just your 153, right? Your 5,000 lineups, and it's going to compare all those lineups to what we think, or what you're going to say the contest field is going to look like. So
yes,
right now, what is defaulted are what Sabersim has in its backtesting wisdom decided is the best representation of the field for all of these contests. So like here, you don't have to specify this. It's going to automatically pick based on what contest you put out.
Yeah.
Now, if you wanted to, again, you could replace this with yours, okay? And gives you so many opportunities to mess up, like so many opportunities to put your own spin on things. So you could, if you wanted to, kind of do that, okay? But again, because I am not as smart as the Sabersim people. I almost never replace with my own in this sport. There's some sports I might. We'll talk about those later. So all you're doing is you're going to hit run contest sim, and then now what it's doing again, it's in the background. It's I guess running a simulation of this contest 2 billion times, or however many times it's doing it, right? More than you are, and it's comparing all 5,000 of your lineups against all 5,000 or whatever, however many field lineups they've created. And yes, you could go into their field lineups and see what they actually look like and what you're comparing it to if you're so inclined. So if you look at their field lineups and say, boy, they have Skeens at 81%. Maybe I don't want to use this as an accurate field because I believe that Skeens is going to be 40%. Sure, yeah, you can do that. But now, what it's done now is it's simulated everything, and it's now defaulted to this thing called direct fill. Now, before we even do that, after simming these 5,000 lineups against the fields, I hope you don't remember. So right now, where the hell did Cleveland come from? Like Cleveland, when we were comparing it to Saber Score, they didn't even exist. Like some of these didn't even exist, and that's what's super duper cool about baseball. Okay, and hockey, for example, like the difference between what you'd be getting in just regular Saber Score and what you'd be getting when you're actually applying the sims is really, really dramatic, and it's going to fry your brain from sometimes. So you really almost have to commit to it, because like sometimes I used to be like, boy, oh boy, with these sims, I'm getting like none of this team that I really wanted. Maybe I'll just do some from Saber Score and some from the sims or whatever it is. But I've just kind of learned if I'm going to trust the process, I don't really want to complain about the outputs, right? So I'll just kind of roll with this. So what this is looking at again is same view as before, but now we're getting the actual simmed results.
Correct.
Right? So now we have a choice, and here's where we have a couple of choices. Number one, you do the same thing that we did before. You go to stack exposure. You could play 5 threes, whatever. You change that. You could give if you don't want 34% Atlanta, you could change that to whatever it is. But the real decision that you have to make from here is whether to use direct fill or autofill to fill these in your lineups. Okay, you have 153 lineups total that you've made, and if you wanted to make all unique lineups, if I'm not mistaken, you would only need 153, right? Because I have 153 in here.
Yeah.
1 and 1 and 1. Okay. Now I'm really bad about not naming my builds. I really, really should.
No, I don't do it either. That's all right.
So if you click on using direct fill, well, it's already, and you hit save to contest. Okay. Boy, oh boy.
You want me to take a shot at this?
No, I'm so much better at explaining autofill. So let me explain autofill first. Okay. So what autofill does, basically, well, first of all, is ensures, number one, that you're not going to get the same lineup in more than one contest. Okay. Now, not the problem with that, the question you would have is, okay, so if you ran your lineups, and let's say a lineup looked really good, and it's so good that it's going to show up in the sims against all 4 of these contests, how do you decide which one to put it in? So what you have to do is actually prioritize from here what contest it's most important that you get that lineup in. So usually I kind of take what you did and I kind of sort it by fee.
Yeah.
Just because like the more money's at stake in a particular lineup, the better for me. So if you put autofill in, what it's going to do, okay, it's going to sim everything against the walk-off home run first. It's going to take the best lineup that applies to the walk-off home run, put it in there. Then it's going to eliminate that from the field, then move down to the next one, and it's going to say, okay, what's the best of the remaining lineups that could show up in the ball 4 as the best lineup? It's going to put that in there, take that out of the field, and then come back to the single entry and say, okay, what's the best lineup there? Put it in there, take that out of the field, and then the remaining, the best 150 that are left are going to be putting it in there. So, so I'm pretty sure that's the way the entry editor works. Whereas opposed to, and we'll get to what these differences are. When direct fill, it just kind of, if it applies to one contest, it's going to go in there. If it applies to 2 contests, it's going to go in there. If it's going to apply to 3 contests, it's going to go in there. And where I would like you to explain again is number one, I guess, why you can't see what's going in when you click autofill.
Yeah.
Number 2 is I want you to explain the differences between the ranking systems, between autofill, like the average of the 4 of them or whatever. So why don't you take this away? Because I still don't get this.
Okay. So let's start with direct fill here first. So one of the things that was almost entirely correct. The one thing I want to correct there is that it is not that autofill is always a unique entry and direct fill allows the same entry to be used. That is controlled in the method drop down. So do you see? Yeah, right there. So whether you're using direct fill or autofill, your method is set to unique rank, which means it's going to put the best lineup into each entry, but always making sure that a unique lineup is used.
Okay.
So if that was set to rank instead, it would allow Sabersim with either fill method to put the same lineup in multiple entries. It won't ever put it in the same contest, but it can put it in 2 different entries in 2 different contests. So let's go back to autofill real quick because I want to touch on why. So why can't you see your lineups here? So you can't see them yet, and I don't know why that is popping up there. But just click keep editing. So as soon as you click save to contest here, you can see the lineups that have gone into the particular entries. The reason you don't see the lineups yet is because we don't know what they are until the fill has happened, right? Like an autofill is essentially, in your case here, going to do 4 different direct fills in a row. It's saying we're going to direct fill the best ROI lineups from the walk-off home run first, put a lineup in there, and then eliminate it. But we don't know what lineup's going to go into the ball for until that walk-off home run has been filled. That's the reason why you don't see the lineups until that process happens. But once they've been filled, that little drop down, there's like a little, sorry, I guess not a drop down. It's like an arrow right next to MLB 40K walk-off home run in the contest table. That's the lineup that went in there. And we are hoping, I would say, in the near future to have the same view that you have on direct fill, where you can see the expanded view, but you can see the lineups in there once they have been filled.
But you don't know right now. Like you don't know right. See, here's the thing. Like if you use direct fill, like you'll know like
what lineup is going to go in. Yeah.
Forget what lineup. You know what exposure you're going to get.
Yes.
Right. Whereas if I'm not mistaken, like if you go to autofill, you don't know if you hit save the contest what your exposure is going to be. Do you?
You don't exactly know what your exposure is going to end up, but it does still respect any exposures that you have set. So
I haven't said it, but I haven't said anything.
Well, you've done the stack exposures. You unchecked. So you're not going to get any of those stacks that you unchecked.
That's true.
If you went through, let's say you're looking at this and you're like, okay, I like the idea of Paul Skeens at most being 47%. You could set a max exposure to 47 and then autofill, and you won't get any more than 47% across any of the contests that you're playing. So I do think the main benefit of autofill here is that you are going to do everything at a per contest basis extremely quickly. Like the whole point of contest sims, the whole reason that they matter is that we're saying every contest is different. Payout structure affects what you should do. Size of the contest affects what you should do. All of that stuff matters. The lineups your opponents are playing. And if that's true and those things do matter, then it makes sense to put the best lineup by an individual contest sim into every contest. And that is what autofill lets you do very quickly. Now, if you are very opinionated about either the individual lineups that are getting into single contests, or it is very important that you know exactly what your exposures are before you fill, you might be better suited to using direct fill, and they're fine. That is why they are both still options here, because for different people, you're going to find it's maybe worth it to go one way or the other. But I would recommend autofill unless you are very strongly opinionated that you.
So was there not something about direct fill ranking it by the average ROI?
Yes.
Autofill the average. What is that about again?
Yes. So again, on autofill, when it says rank by ROI, that's saying when we get to that contest, when we're ready to start filling that contest, we're going to use that contest sim. So it's going to use different numbers for every single contest. Direct fill, when you are looking at ROI, it's taking the average of all of your ROIs for all of your contest sims you have run. So if a lineup has a 90% ROI in direct fill, that means on average across all of the contests you're playing, it has a 90% ROI. It's probably still a good lineup. It's still probably totally fine to play in any of these contests, but it might not be the best possible lineup that could have gone into the particular contest.
So let's just fire it. Now you'll see, by the way, boy, I didn't tell you what to. You know what this is probably doing? Probably because of my stack exposure thing. It's not liking it, I guess.
Yeah, but that's very strange because it should. I am almost positive.
It happens to me more than you. Happens to me more than
really. Okay.
So when we ran it with autofill, like for example, okay, now it'll show what the exposures are, and like so here's like a difference. So in autofill, nothing's different. I'm getting say 32% Hunter Green, 31% Ozuna, and then so Hunter Green would be the top pitcher, whatever. Let's look at stack exposure for a second. Team stacks. Atlanta, Philly, Boston, Minnesota. I want to compare that to autofill, to direct fill, and see what that looks like. So let's say, not save the contest. Sorry. Yeah, that's what I did want to do, right? I wanted to save.
Yeah, no, you got it, and you can see them that they've changed.
Right. So it did change, and then within pitchers, so it didn't change that much though. Okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. So it doesn't really change that much.
Yeah, it's not an enormous difference between autofilling and direct filling.
You think it's okay? Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, Jordan.
No, it's okay.
Do you think it's okay to literally because I only use direct fill pretty much. I also will. I don't do it for NBA, but I will do min masks, some exposures, and I will change a few things in baseball. Is there a reason I should be looking to autofill instead of direct filling?
I would say the more diverse your contests that you're playing are, the more different they are in terms of size or stakes or entry limit, the more you are going to benefit from having used autofill.
Okay.
But if you sit down to build and all of your contests are single entries and they're all around the same size, all of your ROIs from all of your contest sims are going to be similar enough. It's not going to matter.
Okay.
But if you're playing the flagship and then you're also playing high stakes and you're playing low stakes, you're like maxing the lobby, then autofill is probably going to be more in your favor to use because it's going to pick up on how the strategy between those different contests is different.
Okay.
Okay.
Gotcha.
One other thing that I would like to point out, okay, because it's something that I want to say did, but I do less because of something that you told me within the last couple of months, Jordan, is one thing that you that again, I make very few changes after my builds. Well, certainly none before my builds, but after the 5,000 are built, I'll do my OCD, no bad stacks thing, and whatever. That's pretty much it. The other thing you might consider doing is adjusting min uniques in some way, because the more lineups you play, you could argue, okay, that the more diverse you want to get, especially very high variance sports, especially the way the prize pool distribution works out, whatever. So by default, it only requires one min unique player per lineup. So technically you could have 150 lineups where like almost all the same, like just one different in each one. So what I would used to do more than I do now is you could change this to more min uniques, and there are a lot of different kind of best practices that kind of that people are basically like making up, really art versus science about the best way to do it. But like one, for example, is like right now you have, I don't know whether I just have it defaulted that way or you guys have it defaulted that way, but you see here these numbers: average projection 91.1, median destination ROI 60.7. What this is this is your whole portfolio of your 153 here.
Correct.
And that's your average projection of all 153, your average, your median destination ROI of these 153, your min destination of ROI. So what I like to do to think about is, I mean, technically, the more diversity you can have, the better, as long as you're not devastating your whole portfolio. So every benefit has a cost. So you have to always like check to see if the benefit is outweighing the cost. So you got to just kind of keep an eye on this as I go from min uniques 1 to min uniques 2 and see if there's any real change that's being made. Now, here it's processing. So actually, the min destination ROI went up when you went to min uniques 2, as did the average projection. So I would then go to min uniques 3, and I would just keep on kind of screwing around with this until, for lack of a better term, the average or the median just kind of crashed to an amount that made me just not like it. And that's the best like analysis I can come up with. I never really knew what the best way to describe this. Or the other way I could gauge is if when I go from min uniques X to Y, it affected these like stack exposures a little bit too much. So I would just kind of do this, and then I would just kind of just save it this way. Now, one thing that you told me, and maybe I'm old, so I may forgot, but apparently Sabersim, even in its lineup constructions, has made advancements in the last couple of years in its portfolio management sort of, to kind of make sure that you don't have like 148 like the same lineups and one different. So tell me more about that, and tell me if that advancement kind of like reduces or eliminates the need for all this stuff that I'm doing right now.
Yeah, it's on the contest sims. So that is true. So, and you could see it when you were at 1 min unique, or your top exposure was only like 31% or so. So the way that's actually working is, we're aware of how many lineups that you're playing into a given contest. So we're aware that when we run the contest sim for the flagship, that you're playing 150 lineups and basing the contest sims results from that. So let's say there are 25 lineups in your pool that all have a very high ROI and all have a very narrow win condition of when they achieve that ROI. Maybe it's a Marlin stack, for example. So you have 25 very similar Marlin stacks, all have a very high ROI if you just considered them in their own. Sabersim understands that for you to make your profit when that actual outcome happens, you don't need to play 25 Marlin stacks. You maybe only need a handful of them to capitalize on that outcome when that occurs. So that's how the contest sim is kind of tracking it. And that's why it has this way of naturally diversifying you, is it is aware of how many lineups you are playing. And I don't need to get too into the technical details of what's going on behind the scenes there, because I think it's just confusing, but it has an awareness of how many lineups you're playing, what your portfolio looks like for a given contest, and is adjusting the way it recommends lineups to you based on that. So if you are using contest sims, I do think the need to use min uniques has gone down. It used to be, I mean, if people have watched my videos in the past, it used to be, I pounded every single video, use min uniques, use min uniques, use min uniques. I don't think it's like that anymore. It's certainly fine to use it, especially if you prefer to be even more diversified, but you don't need it as much anymore. If you are on using SaberScore, not using the contest sims, I think it's still a pretty nice tool to have in your toolbox to, at least, as you mentioned it, increment it up and see the impact that it has on your portfolio.
Now, it probably requires a whole other video on late swap. Can we even run technically a late swap? No, it's dumb.
We can't, not yet. We
Can
do it for past slates, but this being opening day, we don't have any of those yet. So
one thing I want to point out just about the late swapping that Sheet sort of talked about quite a bit last year, and was surprised as I actually wasn't that surprised, but I think it's important. Look, if you're going to just trust the tools and trust the projections, trust the system, and especially if you're not weighing your own stuff in, but no matter what, people are not late swapping in baseball like they should be, however you want to say it. Even the best players in the world don't do it very often. It's rare. In basketball, we all sort of know we have to, so everyone's sort of gotten on that train. But baseball people aren't doing it. And that is also like, It's an incredible edge to have that really is being overlooked. And I shouldn't even say if you're just trusting the projections and the sims. I really think no matter what, you should be late swapping. And look, you can always change in between each slate. You can change it. If you wanted to get 20% of the Dodgers, you can keep entering 28% and so each time or whatever. But I really think there's a lot of money being left on the table by this, and Sheets capitalized, I think, in a big way last year on this.
Yeah, I did, but again, not to again make this all about late. So I did have just kind of a couple of questions in case again I forget to ask you again.
Sure.
Is one thing that I found when I've been late swapping like other sports too, is that when I'm using the custom projections, like it's weird. Like when you hit late swap, it like automatically starts running the build before it gives you a chance to upload your new projections. And you have to kind of either stop it or wait till it finishes before then uploading your own new projections when you're doing late swap. There's this button, if you saw it, it would say late swap, and you click it, you don't get a chance to upload anything. It automatically just starts running the late swap. I
can show you how to stop that. If you go back to yesterday, like in the top left, I can just show you that quickly because I do think that's a good question.
Is there yesterday? Oh, they have.
Well, at least for basketball.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
We should be able to at least, okay. So do you see the late swap button on the right? There isn't like the normal green one showing a little lower than that, right? To the left of the large slate, 100K. Right there. Okay. So that gear icon right to the right of where you're at right now.
This thing?
Yep.
Oh,
so these are your late swap settings.
Look at that. There it is. It is.
There you go.
Oh, so awesome. Boop. There you go. Okay.
And that should remember that. So you might need to actually press that one more time when you go to do a real late swap. But following that, it should remember that, Sheets does not want us to run a late swap automatically. It will remember any of those settings like that.
And I'm presuming, by the way, and again, we'll talk about you run late swap, that the system is still the same. Like I run the late swap.
It's the exact same.
I click on the whatever, and I could choose again autofill versus direct fill. Same thing, right?
Yes.
Sort of. Yes.
Yes. That was one of the bigger changes that we made heading into this season, or just really over the course of the winter. Is late swap used to be very, very different. Like you'd get the process down before lock, and you'd have that down, and then you go to late swap and it looks totally different. It was our goal to really make those the same thing, and I think we've really gotten there. So it is essentially the same process for late swap and pre-lock now.
And one other thing that I will mention, this is kind of almost a teaser because Jordan and I are going to do a specific thing on late swap. Is that one thing that they added? I guess is that you'll be able to see, like, kind of at the end of the day or even the middle of the day, like what your pre-swap exposures look like versus your post-late. So you could say, like looking back, boy, at 7 p.m. I only had 13% of this guy, but after doing all my late swaps, by the end of the day I had like 39. It'll show you the delta between like who you got more of because of the late swapping versus versus who you had at the beginning, which I think is. From an analysis perspective.
It is cool. Yeah. So the way I actually think it works right now is it'll show you the delta from that swap to whatever you had just before it. Okay. So like if you swap, like for NBA, you're swapping like every half hour. So if you swap 30 minutes after lock, hour after lock, hour and a half after lock, the delta you see in that one is just going to be from whatever you had just before you did it. But it'll just show up as a column. It'll say delta. And that's actually one of my favorite things to look at, just to see how things changed.
Now, with that said, I will also say that probably the only slate for the whole season you are not going to really have late swap is tomorrow.
Opening day, yeah. That's
every
correct.
game is with. Well, I mean, technically, right? You have
405
and 408. Whatever. And believe me, if I had a computer that could do it automatically, I would have it do it. But so this is not the best slate to talk about late swap. But for those of you that have been watching this the whole time, I'm just going to implore you that if late swapping is so important in all sports where it is an option, specifically with Sabersim, because it's not even what people think. Like some people think, oh my God, I'm doing crappy. I need to late swap,
Right.
okay, to something more aggressive. Or I'm doing great, I need to late swap to something chalky. Forget that. It's not even about that. It's that in all of life, whether it be poker or whatever, the more information you have and still have the ability to make decisions, you're always going to be better off factoring in that information. So what Sabersim does in, I guess, some sports on some sites, I guess mostly DraftKings, maybe you tell me about FanDuel too, is what they'll do is they'll track the actual live score of the players that have already started. And that's very important, but crucially important. It will also track the actual ownership of the players that have already locked. So think about this. Like, think about if you have like a 9 o'clock game, right? Slate locks at 7. Let's say there's a 9 o'clock game, and you have an ownership projection, and you think XYZ is going to be a certain percent or whatever, and part of the reason why you thought he was going to be that was because you thought that someone at 7 p.m. was going to be this, right? And let's just say that you were wrong, or the ownerships of the 7 p.m.s are totally different, then that by definition is going to change what the expected ownership of the 9 p.m. guys were, even though you don't know what they are going to be. And to be able to incorporate that and rerun all of your lineups, given that information, is it's just an edge that if you have, you should just never give up.
Yes.
And also, if someone had, if a lineup had a certain amount of points, if a lineup before 7 o'clock, they all have 0. They're all going to project based on whatever they were simulating. But after the first couple of hours, and your guys are doing crappy, then that lineup is now just going to project differently, as are other lineups that have XYZ. So the more times that you run this stuff, the better. While I have you here, does Sabersim support live stuff for both sites or just DraftKings?
Yeah. So the live sims, which basically for the context of baseball means, let's say you're late swapping and a game is in the 3rd inning. We are now adjusting the way we sim that game, not as the whole game, but as what has happened in innings 1 through 3 is what happened, and then simulating innings 4 through 9 after that. So that's when we talk about live sims, that's what we mean. That happens for baseball, football, and basketball on every site. That you always have the live sims. The live fields, as we refer to them, the live lineups you're competing against in your contests, is DraftKings only.
Okay.
That is extremely powerful. I want to stress that too. That is to the specific contest you are playing. So, like, before lock, we make some generalizations about contests. We're pretty specific, but we say, for example, that all single entries between 10 cents and $3 are approximately the same contest. After lock, that is not the case. Like, we're saying it is different if you're in the $1 single entry or the $3 single entry. They have different, your opponents play different lineups. And actually looking at the specific lineups, and if we have lineups in those contests where we can see 3 of their players that have started because they've already locked and we can't see the remaining 9 or 6 or 7 or whatever it is, then we're saying we think it's this. And as we continue to get more information, 2 more games lock, and now we know 4 more players in that lineup, we say, okay, we think the rest of this is this. So you nailed it. You're progressively getting more information about what's happening on the field and also in the contests, and late swap accounts for all of that when you're running those contest sims.
But as far as like the points projections, they are live point projections for FanDuel?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. But again, they don't have them for all sports, but baseball for both sites, you're saying you have them both. Okay, that's fine. Are you not with hockey yet, right?
No, I don't think we have the live. We don't have live sims for hockey.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we do for DraftKings have the live fields. I might have to check on that.
Okay.
But we're not doing the live sims for hockey.
Okay. So all this was a very long, explanation of what's essentially an extremely quick process. Like for me, like we went through like all the details of how whatever, but like for those of you that watch our streams, like you see me go through my entire builds. And in baseball, I mean, it's honestly the same. It's the same as every other sport except for UFC, which it's another story. But it's literally the same thing. I upload my projections, and again, if you're a TrueDFS member, you have like not unlimited, but extraordinarily diverse group of projections to choose from. You could use the Sabersim ones, you can use mine, you can use Goldie's, you can average the three, you could, there's a zillion ways that you can put projections up, but whichever projections you're putting up there, the process is just like lightning for me. And that's really what Sabersim was designed for, is for people that want to be able to compete in these tough, they're tough, these tough GPP fields without having to spend like hours creating rules, without hours analyzing correlations, without hours worrying if just optimizing lineups is going to provide good upside. And again, if I had to give you guys any advice, these are for more like kind of the advanced players, but also for the non-advanced players, is don't get too complicated with this, okay? And again, trust your people and trust when they say they back tested it. It's not, for some companies it is just marketing, honestly, but for these guys it actually happens. Like I've talked to some of these guys, like these, I forget who it was, some guy did a special report on like, oh my God, you never believe the cool thing that I figured out after like running stuff for like hours and hours and hours. You know what I mean? Like these guys really enjoy this for some reason, and running all these back testing things. Well, because they want to make this a solid product. And I really trust the lineup builders. I trust the sims. I trust the contest sims. And I've always found that the more I deviated from this, the worse it was. It used to be that they had this kind of yell at you option where if you made too many changes, like it said, nope, we cannot build lineups. I don't even see that anymore. Thank God. I don't know if they still have the yell at you option, but you don't have to be that ego guy that says, I'm trusting a simulator, I'm trusting a computer. What you're trusting are the people that are continuing to test these processes. And for me, again, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, Bobby. I went back-to-back nights. Remember, I won the two lottos in back-to-back nights, the DraftKings and FanDuel. And what was cool about it is both nights I tried using the Sabersim stock contest fields, and on the other side I used my own custom fancy I'm smarter than everybody contest fields, right? And literally back to back. The first night I used the custom ones for DraftKings. I basically didn't cash in a single contest, and I won the FanDuel lottery. And then the next night, why don't we switch it around? And I used the exact same thing happened. My fancy schmancy ones for FanDuel cashed for zero, and DraftKings I won the lottery over there. So just trust me, these guys are good.
Yeah, I will. One thing I will add on to that too is like if you have a couple takes, like or just an angle that you want to play on the slate, it is totally fine to put those in, and Sabersim will still tell you the most profitable way to do that.
Yep.
Like I do think people get a little bit like feeling like if they're going to use the Sims, they have to become like a trust the Sims bro completely. And that's really not the case. Like if you go into tomorrow and you say, I don't care, I'm fading Paul Skeens, I just am, like you can uncheck him and the contest Sims will say, okay, here's the 150 most profitable ways to fade Paul Skeens. And you go on your way and do that. And so it is built to be extremely powerful, but also give you a lot of room to operate if you want to. I don't have a lot of takes when it comes down to my strategy, but a lot of people do. And it is perfectly fine to do that and to express those takes.
I can just speak to that just in the, I won the million by tweaking things on my own while using the sim. I did that exact thing. And then that same night, I finished second in the showdown for 77,500 or whatever it was with doing the exact same thing. I weighed in on about 4 different players. In that case, it was min-max exposure. In some cases, it's changing a projection by a point or two. And it obviously worked out really well for me, and it's worked out really well for a lot of other people. So you can weigh in, and as Jordan's saying, I just wanted to sort of echo that, like what he's saying is that I've seen that happen in real time, and you can still be both.
One other thing, again, only because we're talking about this a little bit. I still have this min unique thing for a second. Is if you're playing a bunch of lineups and this is just my experience, is when you use my process, now don't make too many changes, maybe do some uniques. What I always end up getting in, and this is how I know things are working right, when I cash really big in something, whether I win or get second, the distributions of my lineups are different than like a lot of like experts that I see sometimes. Like for me, I will almost always have one just kind of outlier lineup that just blasts and beats everybody, and my next best one will be like 200th or something like that. And you see some other people, like I talk about Adam Scherer sometimes when he wins, it's always like he's got first, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th. He's like, and sometimes when I'm fighting the leaderboards, I see some of these guys. Boy, I got to beat this guy who's in 2nd, 8th, 9th, and 11th or something. How does that happen? And but for me, almost all of my wins were based on that, that big one-tail lineup. And because of the way the Sabersim portfolio management works, that's kind of the way it happens. You don't have like the whole, like the pinned, like the pinned R where 150 lineups, 150 of them are all cashing and they're all fighting with each other. I think that speaks to what you were talking about creating a decent portfolio of lineups, which is, I think, like really the next frontier, which Sabersim at least started to think about doing.
For sure, yeah. And you don't really, I think, want to have all those lineups at the top. Like, you can only win first once on a given night. So if you take, I think this sounds weird to people when they hear it, but finishing first and second in a contest,
it's kind of
bad. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, it's kind of like autofill, right? You want to take that one lineup out, right? Replace another one. All right. Well, again, I could go on forever. But we should probably stop. This is probably more comprehensive than anybody would do as an intro to start the season. But this is for TrueDFS. This is what you're like. If you missed this process, you're going to see it with me almost every night. Like every night that I'm on, you're going to see me running it. And I can tell you this, that if this looks complicated, I will say this, that I am not, believe it or not, I'm not technically savvy. What I'm really good at is repetition and grinding. And that's why I run these things. Even something stupid as me running this just now for you guys, that helps me. Because the more times you run it, the more your muscle memory is, the more you know where to click and this, that, and the other thing. And so again, I'm used to Sabersim. Like I'm sure if I went to run this into one of these other sites, even if it were as good, it would take me a long time to figure out the way to click it. You know what I mean? But so it does take a little bit of practice. Like Bobby, how long does it take? You still are kind of struggle, right? Sometimes to get around, but you're getting better at it, right?
Yeah. I've gotten a lot better at it.
But you watch me, like every slate that we're going live, I will just do this. And again, you have to learn what you're looking for. You're not looking for who I'm playing, because sometimes I don't even look myself. You're just looking for the process for to help you guys get better.
Absolutely.
All right, that's it.
Yep.
All right. You guys want any closing remarks or anything?
I'm good. Jordan, anything for you?
No, I mean, I'll mention that like on our YouTube channel and our stuff, we'll have content coming out as well over the course of the season, especially as we get started here. We have some helpful videos from last year that are already up as well. And always happy to help answer any questions in the Discord.
Talk about, do you still office hours?
Yep. Yeah. So Andrew's running with that. He's one of the coaches on our teams. He does that Monday. I think it is. Yeah. Monday through Saturday now.
Yeah.
So 6 days a week you can join in there, ask him questions live, ask follow-up questions if things are confusing. So a really good resource there. And
within our TrueDFS Discord, I think we have our own specific Sabersim Discord channel. So if you want to drop a question in there, because I'm really not the best with responding to Discord stuff. But if Adam's really good, if he's around, he can respond to that stuff. He's honestly just about as good as I am with the stuff.
Yeah, you guys have been incredible about being responsive in that with Sabersim.
Yeah, our guys are in there. So
yeah. And that's about it.
Sweet.
All right, good luck, everybody. We'll meet